Pandemik COVID-19 menyaksikan adaptasi bekerja di rumah berlaku lebih pantas dan ada kalanya di luar jangkaan kerana kerja yang sebelum ini dilihat sukar dilakukan di rumah akhirnya boleh dilakukan. Persoalannya, apabila ekonomi kembali dibuka kini, bagaimanakah syarikat di Malaysia mengubah semula sistem mereka dan adakah mereka kembali kepada cara lama dan bagaimana teknologi terkini mempermudahkan urusan kerja berlainan tempat ini? Kajian dijalankan oleh Gartner mendapati 90% organisasi membenarkan pekerja mereka mengambil waktu fleksibiliti dari segi masa bekerja sesuai dengan keadaan semasa. Kita ikuti temu bual saya bersama dengan Ketua Kejuruteraan Pelanggan Google Workspace APAC, Dragana Bera. Dragana Bera, thank you so much for joining us at this time. First of all, the pandemic forced us all to abruptly adopt and also get used to remote working irrespective of our work arrangements before. And there have been also various levels of success in organizations adopting and also embracing this shift. Some struggle, of course, but many saw remote and even hybrid working as a new way of working to get on board with, even after the pandemic. Now, as the country is slowly opening up again, what would you say has been the make or break factor for companies doing remote or hybrid working successfully?
Thank you for having me first. This is a really interesting topic because a lot of companies, when we went into the remote work, have gone through some levels of pain, but eventually everyone has emerged after the initial shock and adjustment as, this new way of working as a productive organization. And as a matter of fact, a lot of businesses have recorded better results while some of the employees have seen more of a burnout. So how do we move forward in this brave new world of flexible work? There are several considerations to be made. One, because I think in most organizations, there's going to be an option for people to take a few days of work from home or wherever it works for them and a few days in the office. And as we know, a lot of people that are in the office have specific style of work. They usually link to a device or a mobile device and generally tend to be in a similar environment, while frontline workers who are different breed of productivity, they tend to have more unique needs. So looking at those two styles of personas is really important when you're considering what you will offer them to be successful. And there are really three high-level factors to consider. One is your technology that you're going to deploy for people to actually augment their classical and in-person style of work. The other one is processes, and the third one is culture, which is really important because if you used to measure people's face time as a criteria of their dedication to your office, then you probably are in a situation that they will still want to come to the office because they will not trust they're going to be appreciated otherwise. So that's a really key point. But on the tools front, if we look at it from Google Workspace point of view, we look at the personas, we look at the frontline worker persona, and we look at the knowledge worker persona, and we basically have put together offerings for both. One, when it comes to knowledge worker and people who are usually office bound, we really look after the collaboration equity. Because in the past, people who were not in person in the office, if there was a group collaboration taking place, they were losing out on their own experience. They felt not visible. They felt like they couldn't contribute at the same level. So with the tools like Google Meet, we actually offer people an ability to raise their hands, to have a Q&A, to do polling, and then we even furnish our offices, for example, at Google with life-size screens so that people who are not in the office have the same amount of visibility as those who are there in person when there is a team collaboration and meeting taking place. If you look at the tools in the sense of the documents, we also offer real-time joint editing between parties regardless of where they're located or even regardless of the devices that they're using, which is really, really game changer for a lot of people in this mode. And then if we look at the industries and the fact that we need to standardize how industries work together, how frontline workers are getting productive in those industries. And we look at, for example, the industries that have had a lot of benefit from Google Workspace are retail, manufacturing, digital natives, as well as healthcare. they all have unique tasks. So, for example, in a healthcare environment, we can enable telemedicine, and we can enable patients seeing their doctors without actually having to go to their office. And all of that is done very securely through Google Meet. Doctors can pull out their patients' records. They can share them with their colleagues. They can share them with lab documentation with labs without ever actually leaving their location, which has been really a key success factor during the pandemic and moving forward. In retail, we've seen this big digital transformation where a lot of customer experiences have moved online, but of course, a lot of people are still interested in going to stores. So how do we equip the retail agents to give the information that customers are accustomed to getting online, in a matter of seconds, is by giving the store agents ability to access information they need to access the resources in the form of other people's advice or connection for their customers to give them better information. So all of that is really something to consider when you move forward with the flexible work. So your persona, that you're providing technology and culture and process for is really important to understand and offer the best user experience you can.
I want to dive a little deeper into the topic of collaboration. How important is it to the success of organizations, and what tools from Google are available for businesses to use and collaborate effectively?
So I think we've already touched a little bit in my previous examples on that. But if you look at the report that we did with Forrester a while back, and it was actually done just before COVID, it's called Total Impact of a Google Workspace. We have found that there was an average return on investment over 330% over 3 years. And it kind of spanned 4 different factors. One was the revenue growth, where additional revenue grew by 1.5% year over year. I would say if we were to redo that report, the numbers would probably be higher, just given the amount of digital transformation that took place in the last 2 years. Second is employee efficiency. So employees are able to streamline their workflows. They're, making sure that, whatever they do is done in the most efficient way. They also don't have to travel very much. So all of that prior to COVID added up to 21 days every year. I believe that today that would probably add up to a lot more. Third is risk mitigation. Customers were able to reduce their risk of data breaches with Google Workspace phishing and malware protection that proactively detects potential threats and then blocks those messages from coming through, which we all know some people are very compulsive in pressing links, regardless of how much you educate them. So having that automation in the system was definitely very helpful. And the fourth one was IT cost savings, because if you start retiring your existing legacy hardware, software, and you start reducing travel, you can definitely save in OpEx and CapEx. And also Google Workspace, and just generally Google environment as any cloud environment is overall less of an impact on IT. So you can actually focus your IT resources to look at innovation and interesting projects versus just running operations. So that's really something that is important to look at when you are trying to measure your collaboration and communication. In terms of our tool, we actually have 3 principles. One is flexibility, another one is helpfulness, and the fourth one is fueling innovation. And I think fueling innovation is very unique to Google Workspace because Google Workspace was originally built for Google. And as you know, Google has been one of the more innovative companies out there. So all of that IP that we put into our tool is now available to our customers to embrace digital and innovate at their own pace.
Is collaboration really only effective for bigger organizations? Can SMEs basically benefit from it as well? And how does basically Google's collaborative tools cater to smaller organizations?
Absolutely. In fact, many SMBs choose to start their business with Workspace. My first experience actually with Google Workspace was back when it was Google Apps back in 2013. I worked with a startup that didn't want to lease a space. So a number of us worked across Greater Toronto area together and I have to say I was very impressed with the fact that we were able to simultaneously, during meetings, edit the same documents. We were able to communicate and collaborate as if we were in the same space. And that actually contributed to quite a bit of saving on the actual real estate expenditure. Now, in terms of ease of starting to use this platform, you don't really need IT expertise to use or adopt it. Administration of the platform is simple, and you also don't need a dedicated IT team, so that's really good for SMBs. Another one is SMBs are always on the lookout for good talent. Usually a lot of young people like to engage with startups and smaller organizations. So in the last 10, 15 years, Google Classroom has been one of the norms within many educational institutions. So the younger generation, they are all accustomed to this tool. And if they're not part of that generation, pretty much everyone among those 3 billion users of Google Workspace across consumer to enterprise have at least experienced it in their personal life. So it's actually easy to use in work environment. And of course, the solutions that we have and the offers we have for SMB are very affordable from the cost point of view. We have solutions for a 2-person company all the way up to 2,000-person company and in between. And of course, security is a big factor today. When everything is digital, we are looking to basically simplify everything for our customers. So everything is running through a browser. And you can always be sure that you're using the latest version. There's no need for patching. So overall, this is actually a perfect solution for SMB.
You share some of the experience working with SMEs, but could you share with us some examples of the success stories, big corporations or SMEs that made that shift to Google Workspace and saw positive outcomes to their productivity and also bottom line?
Absolutely. You'll probably recognize, and I know your audience is primarily Malaysian, so some of the key big brands within Malaysia that we work with are AirAsia, which probably everyone's already flown with. GoPamela is another Southeast Asian systems integrator that has basically built their business on Google Workspace. They provide consulting services, so their consultants from around the world can not around the world, but around the region can collaborate and communicate easily and develop customer proposals, solution briefs, and such. We also have worked with Ninja Van from their inception. They actually, in the last 5 years, they've gone from a small startup into a 30,000 employee company. So facilitating communication, collaboration between their drivers and their logistics team has been sort of what powered the evolution of that company. We're very honored to be a part of that journey. And finally, KPJ Health is one of the biggest healthcare providers within Malaysia. They have 28 hospitals. They have 3 million patients, over 1,000 medical staff. And as you know, Malaysia has gone through a number of lockdowns over the past couple of years. So enabling those teams to continue to serve their patients flawlessly without actually having to see them in person through video calls, having to pull up their medical imaging or medical documentation from Google Drive and exchanging that with the labs and other doctors that they're seeking professional advice from has been very useful to not interrupt that level of medical care for this organization.
Dragana, are there ways to measure collaborative success? What should leaders maybe look out for in their teams to know whether they are doing things right?
Some of the key points really, I think, that tell you whether your communication and collaboration, which is really like a nervous system of an organization, is going well, because obviously without a healthy nervous system, you don't have a healthy body. So having that work well is key. And so the business success and prosperity of an organization is one of the good indicators that your communication and collaboration is going well. But the people who are basically powering that organization need to be happy, need to have good user experience, need to be efficient, and need to have the time to do the important tasks. So looking at basically optimizing how people get their information, eliminating redundant facts and quantity of info that's going at everyone is really key. Embedding artificial intelligence to help them siphon through the info and get to the most critical points is also important. Looking at, do you have your teams really focused on something that is helping them deliver the most of their creativity and intellect versus doing some routine tasks that can be automated? All of that is a way to really measure that collaboration and communication success of whatever you have in your environment.
All right, Dragana, thank you so much for spending time with us. Dragana Bera, APAC Head of Google Workspace Customer Engineering untuk Niaga AWANI.